Wordsworth, there is no God. The state has proven that there is no God.
You cannot erase God with an edict.
You are obsolete, Mr. Wordsworth. You have no function, Mr. Wordsworth. You're an anachronism, like a ghost from another time.
I am nothing more than a reminder to you that you cannot destroy truth.
You're a bug, Mr. Wordsworth, a crawling insect, an ugly, misformed little creature who has no purpose here, no meaning.
I am a human being. I exist. And if I speak one thought out loud, that thought exists, even after I'm shoveled into my grave.
Illusions, Mr. Wordsworth. Illusions, the Bible, poetry, essays of all kinds, all of it an opiate to make you think you have a strength when you have no strength at all. You have nothing but spindly limbs and a dream, and the state has no use for your kind.
Yeah? Well, we're gonna have to do something about that. This is RiverwestRadio.com, community-supported radio streaming live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm your host. My name is Michael Wordsworth, and welcome to Breaking Down the News, the show that presents the news highlights of the week, but with a twist. Breaking Down the News is more concerned in bringing you information that wasn't covered on the front pages. Headlines you don't want to miss, because not listening could be dangerous to your freedom, liberty, and health. And good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We have an awesome show today. I am Michael Wordsworth. Today is Friday, October 26, 2012. Congratulations for making it this far, huh? The dreaded 2012. Today is going to be somewhat of our Halloween episode, although we don't really observe these types of strange holidays indeed. Halloween is not one of them. It's a day for the kids, but we have some scary stuff to tell you. On the line coming up real soon, we have Dan Lozzi. He's got some interesting facts, figures, and just horrible, horrible news that we really need to hear, and that's what's crucial about it. Sometimes it's painful to take in this information, but we must bear it. We must face reality head on. Otherwise, what are we looking at? We've just got our heads in the ground and we're not seeing anything. All right. Well, aside from today, we're going to cover up an interesting development in weather. We've spoken of weather modification here on this show several times. And what's coming up this Monday and Tuesday, well, we've got a hurricane. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the hurricane coming, but has anybody out there really considered that this could be a weather modification program in effect? I know it's scary to think of it, but scientists have been controlling and modifying the weather ever since the Vietnam War, when they were able to steer monsoons onto the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That in mind, what do we have coming up right next to this November election? Terrible, terrible weather. Could it be an event that actually brings things down and postpones the elections? We're going to see, and we're going to talk more about that. I'm going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to have Dan on the line. He's going to give you some information that you are just going to love to hear, but dread to face the reality of it. But I urge you, please, listeners, be strong, have strong hearts, because we need to face this. I'm Michael Wordsworth. You're listening to Breaking Down the News on RiverwestRadio.com. We'll be right back. You're listening to RiverwestRadio.com.
Experiments have shown that less than 1 minute after the viewer begins to watch television, the brain switches from beta-level consciousness, associated with active and logical thought, to alpha level, which is associated with passive acceptance and suggestibility. This is why advertisers spend billions of dollars a year on commercials, as well as product placement within TV shows. Political messages are implanted in fictional TV programs as the relaxed, meditative state of the viewer is receptive to the programming.
You're listening to RiverwestRadio.com.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
This is Breaking Down the News, bringing you headlines that should have made the front pages. Streaming live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard. All right, we are back. Thank you for joining us. We've got Dan holding on the line. Let's bring him up here. Dan, are you with us?
I'm with you. How you doing, Michael?
Oh, great.
Great.
It's an incredible day we've got here, isn't it, sir?
Yeah. Weather's nice here, though, but that hurricane you mentioned is on the way, unfortunately.
That hurricane, did you hear that little shout-out that I gave about that?
Yeah, I think we'll probably see it get hit a little more out here in Massachusetts than you will. But, yeah.
Oh, I know. I'm worried. I'm worried about you guys because,
Right.
in all seriousness, they are saying that this is the perfect storm developing.
Well, I'll tell you what. Just from living out here for so long, there's also the chance it could just be rain. But based on what you just said, I think people get so hyped up about things that even if it is rain, they were saying this morning on the news it could alter the election, even if it's just a heavy storm. So it does have an effect on people, and it amazes me that people would stay inside and let rain stop them from voting if, in fact, that is what it turns out to be, a big rainstorm. And, it goes, perfect intro into what I'm about. Just the total comatose collapse of the culture, and where one thing is more important than another, and how priorities are just completely backwards at this moment, as cliche as that sounds.
It is not a cliche at all. It's more likely a horrible reality. Dan, we're going to cut to commercial set number 2. Give us a couple of minutes to regroup here. But then we're going to come back. We're going to introduce you to the worldwide audience properly, as I'm sure. And thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay, everybody, stay tuned. Don't go away. We will be right back. You're listening to RiverwestRadio.com.
When you start talking about manipulating the environment, we have treaties that go back to the mid-'70s that forbid this, number one, as weapons of war.
So the perfection of weather modification took place, but it became apparent that using weather modification for wartime purposes was not acceptable to the United States government and other nations of the world. So therefore, the NMOD Treaty came into being and was signed by the United States government after passing Congress. The reason it was signed and implemented was because it would ban warfare, weather modification techniques and use during times of war.
Almost all of our treaties that we've signed, including the non-proliferation, counter-proliferation treaties, chemical treaties, the ones that were signed recently, last few years, back maybe a decade now, I guess time goes. But they had domestic exemptions, and so does the environmental treaty, where you can do whatever you want in your own territorial boundaries. When you start manipulating weather in one part of the planet, it doesn't look on the ground and say, this is the boundary of a political boundary. It fails to recognize those. So you start to talk about geophysics and manipulating the planet itself. Then it's a question of those kinds of exemptions shouldn't even be allowed.
Meteorology and the military have a very long history, as I said, and it goes into the strategic advantage that multiplies your traditional force, that is your armament, into using nature to your advantage as well.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
This is Breaking Down the News, bringing you headlines that should have made the front pages. Streaming live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3:30 p.m. Central Standard. All right, we are back. Let me tell you about the Outlook program. This is what Mr. Lozzi started. The Outlook program to stop abuse is a Massachusetts-based organization which addresses child abuse, exploitation, domestic violence, animal abuse, human rights abuses, school violence, politics, social issues, and environmentalism. Many, many other topics are covered by Mr. Lozzi while mixing right and left-wing beliefs. The group was founded in 2004 by Dan Lozzi, pronounced Lozzi, thank you, sir, and who writes articles for his website and speaks at all ages, punk, hardcore, metal, and hip-hop shows. The group is recognized as a nonprofit organization, and with 5 speaking tours already under his belt, 4 in the U.S. and 1 UK tour, Dan will be in the Midwest this November for 2 shows only. This is going to happen on Friday, November 9th at the Tin Can Pub in Springfield, Illinois, and Saturday, November 10th at the Port of Hamburg Hardcore for Hunger benefit show in Milwaukee. Welcome to the show, Mr. Lozzi.
Thank you very much. Thanks again. Thanks for having me. And sounds like we should have a lot of fun in the next few minutes.
Indeed. You're welcome to stay as long as you can chat, but I'm sure...
I'm fine. I'm here as long as you want to have me on.
That's great. We discussed that there were so many topics to go over, but I was wondering if you had one headliner, aside from the fact that we want to announce you will be here again Friday, or November 10th at the Port of Hamburg.
Yeah, it's actually O'Keefe's Port of Hamburg, November 10th, Saturday night. I made sure I clarified. It's my buddy Zach in the band, New Society of Anarchists. He holds a annual hardcore punk show, and it's called Hardcore for Hunger. And it's like a food drive type benefit. He tried getting me out last year, and finally this year we were able to put it together. So that's why I'm going to do the Illinois show also. My friends from another activist group called No More Victims booked me for that the night before. And so I'm not really on tour, but I'm coming out for the 2 shows. And if people want to check it out, they can also go to my website. And if they want details, or email me or whatever, it's www.theoutlookspeaks.org. And if you want details, let me know. And I invite anyone who wants to come out. They can come and meet me. I have a table set up, and I'll be speaking at both events.
Well, let me ask you right off the bat, what will you be discussing here in Milwaukee? What's the topic of the night?
I have no clue. I have no plan.
Good job. I love that.
Plan.
No,
right.
Hey, all strategies fall apart when you actually get into battle. I agree with you, sir. And quite frankly, you're speaking from the heart. You're dealing from experiences that you've had, experiences that you've gained from your listeners.
Right.
So this isn't something that it's not that hard, folks, to prepare for these things.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Well, Michael, the one thing I want to say, too, I mean, you said, like, at the beginning of the show in the intro, you're talking about, like, hard, brutal facts, and I don't throw a lot of numbers at people. What I do is I give very just concrete, in-your-face examples that, while it might not be a statistic, I can back it up 100%, you know, and it's things that people see right in front of them. That'd probably be a better description, and I'm not trying to depress people. I really feel like I'm trying to get something going in there. The biggest problem, and you know this, you'd be shocked at how many people agree with me and know it's a problem, and they don't know where to start. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to go about it. But I think a lot of the things I talk about does bother a lot of people. They're just so used to it at this point that they really not only conditioned to do nothing, but they'll even attack the messenger at times. You know, so that's more of I think a little better analysis, kind of like what I'm about right now.
Well, let's run this up the flagpole. What is on your radar right now that is the most pressing issue?
Well, I would say right now, if I had to pick one thing, this big kick that I've been on right now, and I can give you an example from this morning. Everybody says, you know, I do talk about politics and stuff. We can get into that, but there's a running theme through whether I'm talking about politics or any of the other issues you brought up, child abuse and whatnot. There's a running theme where I feel like America tend to say one thing and do the other constantly. Great example. Every morning I see The View. I wake up very early in the morning for work. Sometimes I'm home early, and I do catch a lot of the daytime shows. Every morning I watch these women on The View have their hot topics, right?
Right.
And they're very intelligent women, and every time you have one of the hot topics is a story of child abuse or some type of exploitation of women, or, you know, teenagers, you know, 6th graders sending sex messages to each other, you know, it's sexting, however you want to define it. You know, they're so horrified. And then literally they go to commercial break, come back, and their guest is one of the people from Jersey Shore. Okay? Now, what does Jersey Shore stand for? You know what I mean? And it's the same thing with Toddlers and Tiaras. People can shake their head. They can say Toddlers and Tiaras is a disgusting show and it's child pornography and this, that, and the other thing, but yet America clearly has embraced this television show. It goes on to the point where, like I said, I think people will even attack the messenger. I had a woman one time come up to me after one of my gigs, and she's like, what you're doing's great and all, but it's just depressing me. I came here to hear music, and you're here speaking or whatever. Well, I go on to speak with the woman and talk and get to know her. Turns out her little daughter or her little sister, the family's concerned because she's being beat up by the boyfriend. Well, here I am talking about domestic violence, and you're like angry at me for bringing it up, but yet your little sister is being beat up by her boyfriend. So, I mean, that's a classic example of not only is this woman not only does she not want to do anything, but she's just been trained to even attack a person verbally who could maybe possibly help her in her situation.
You must have hit too close to home. Maybe it triggered some sort of reaction in her, but honestly,
possibly.
What would have been nice if the woman would have said, Mr. Lozzi, I agree with you. In fact, if we were going to actually teach our children beauty, why do we have them dressed up like French whores from World War II?
Well, you know what, Michael, I can't even, I'm very brutal in my delivery, and I don't mind saying it. I don't pull punches. I'm 35 years old. I'll tell you straight out to your face. I can't tell the difference between a 14-year-old and a 24-year-old anymore. I have no clue. I have a tendency to keep to myself because of that. I mean, it is appalling. It's mind-blowing the way these kids dress. And, not just the girls, but the guys. But, every guy I know, every father I know my age has a daughter, and they sit there and go, not my daughter, not my daughter. No guy's getting near my daughter. But then I get to know the guy, and the daughter's doing exactly what he says he's not going to allow. It's the internet, too. The kid locks himself in the bedroom, and the parents have no clue what's going on. And we're in the age of divorce. I mean, you probably got that vibe from looking at my website. I mean, I just talk about how the family unit is destroyed, and I don't think it's fair that, people blame it. They say, oh, the gay community's wrecking the family. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I mean, I have nothing against the gay community, and sadly, sometimes I've had gay couples approach me at my gigs, and they think I'm talking about them or I'm against gay couples. Not at all. I'm talking, that's a political, that was political.
Right.
Like, to me, the reason the families break it up is, cheating on your wife is now an option. I mean, it's totally normal now. Every song on the radio, these kids are coming from divorced homes, and then they're hearing every other song on the radio. The theme is, listen, your husband isn't here right now. Your boyfriend isn't here, so I'm going to move in on you. And it's totally cool. Everyone's cool with it.
Well, I'm not cool with that. I am in no way cool with that, bud.
Right. Maybe you and me, but I see.
But you bring up an interesting point, and that is the polarization of these issues, and especially in the one that you're discussing here.
Right.
From the left, you might have proponents saying, oh, you're not for gay rights. But actually what really happened is the right-wing Christian zealot sort of fundamentalist extremists somehow obtained a monopoly on family values throughout the course of our media indoctrination. Right. So it's as if they have some sort of right that others don't. And in other words, if you're for family values, you have to be against gays now.
Right. There's so much of that. There's a billion examples of that. It's the same thing as I'm right wing, so therefore I'm not allowed to care about the environment. I know people like that, literally. It's like they take pride in polluting, and it's the same with the left wing. I can give a million examples. Any left wing commercial, to vote for Obama is obviously the immediate reaction is going to be attack Romney, even if it's not true. It goes back and forth. Michael, I'll tell you something too, and I used to never write about religion. I do now because it's just such a hot topic issue. And I write about the fact, like many people here in Massachusetts, I grew up Catholic, most of us are, and I'm horrified, and I agree with people. When people start attacking Christians or Catholics, they say exactly what you just said. I agree with them. Catholics or Christians or whatever you want to call them have dug their own grave. I was never taught to hate anybody. I went to Catholic school. No one told me to hate gays or this, that, and the other thing, and I'm horrified by the way Christians behave now. I also think, again, getting back to how it goes both ways, I also think on the other side of the coin, I see people finger-pointing at Christians and blaming them when they didn't deserve it in the first place. I mean, I had a girl come up to me one time recently. She read one of my pamphlets, and I had written about this, and all she saw was the word religion or Jesus or something, started attacking me. And I said, listen, I agree with everything you're saying. If you read my article, you'd see I agree with you, but you did the same thing that a judgmental Christian would do. You read one word, you threw the thing on the ground, my pamphlet, and then you come attacking me, so you're kind of doing the same thing. And again, Michael, it gets back to my theme. It doesn't matter if you're right-wing, left-wing, atheist or Christian, environmentalist, or you're working for an oil company. Everyone's pointing the finger at each other, and they're not looking themselves in the mirror. And I think this split where you only have two choices in an election and two ideologies, two is such a magical number because no matter how many people I have in a room, it's always going to split the room in half. It's always going to be, do you like chocolate or vanilla, right? And if you even had just one more party or even no parties or one party where everyone had different ideas, it would completely change the dynamic of politics in this country.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, thank you for saying that. It is something that we need to break this paradigm, this left-right paradigm. Do you want Coke or Pepsi? It's still a toxic poisonous cola that kills you.
Right.
Well, Dan, I'm noticing, I'm looking at your website at theoutlookspeaks.org.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you've actually taken up the banner for what I can't help but notice right off the bat is these tend to be people that may or may not be able to speak up for themselves. You're representing a lot of women and children.
Right, and the animal rights stuff, too.
Animal rights definitely can't speak for themselves, can they? Somebody's got to take up their cause.
Right.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say with the animal rights, too, I mean, I am a vegan. I have been for, I've lost count, 11, 12 years maybe. And my thing with veganism and with animals, and I've said it all the time, look, at least know where your food comes from. I mean, so many people don't. Maybe it's too tough for a person to be a vegetarian or a vegan, but on top of that, they have no clue how that food gets on their plate. And I say at least educate yourself. If you can live with how the suffering the animal goes through, then, whatever, your life, I guess. I can't really say nothing here, but some people are just clueless. I mean, I remember, do you remember a few years back, it was quite a few years ago now, on Survivor, on that show, something happened. I missed it, but they killed a pig or something, and people were horrified. And it's like, I knew people that were horrified by that and then went to Burger King the next day. I'm like, how do you think that got on your plate at Burger King? There's just a disconnect by, people think they turn a light on and they think like there's a magic leprechaun making the light work. You know what I mean? It's the same with food. People just don't get where their food comes from.
You know what brings to mind right off the bat is, in a strange sense, you are, by taking up animal rights advocacy, you might be acting in behalf of the future because the trend seems to be, this transhumanist trend seems to be one where basically they want to look at human beings as animals.
Right.
And so in a weird way, you might be taking up human rights. And now what I always found interesting, I'd like your comment on this. Without this idea of a deity creator, then we are left with the question of, then by what rights does man base his rights on? Do we give the validity to ourselves? And if correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it the FDA, when they go to make medicines, they say and other animals, human beings and other animals, which implies that we are in fact animals, that we have no. What is your basis on that? Do you agree with the transhumanists? Do you agree with the creationists? Or do you have something that's kind of a culmination of both of them?
Oh, absolutely both. Absolutely both. Like I said, Michael, I find it very hard to believe, and I know, again, in this age of science, this isn't a popular belief. I find it very hard to believe that we just happened. My main views on, like, what happens after you die and how we got here is purely something a lot of people can relate to. I had a great interest in the paranormal and ghosts and things like that. growing up. And I just always had questions. I'm like, we must have come from somewhere. I mean, you got all these people that investigate ghosts and everything else. Well, who is it that they're talking to, you know? But at the same time, I also believe that even though we may all have a purpose or be here for a reason, we definitely have choices in life. And there is a lot that's in our control. You know, with the exception of natural disasters, I mean, we create this environment. We're creating what we're going through on this planet. It's a choice. Things didn't just get this way because they got this way. People, you know, a lot of people take pride in destroying this country or destroying the world or whatever it is. So, yeah, I definitely think it's a combination of both. And every year, you know what, I'll say this to you too, Michael. I do believe there's a natural evolution where every 10 years or so, you know, people steer farther and farther away from good moral grounds. You know, you saw how 50 years ago people were freaked out by Elvis, and now we laugh at it. You know, I mean, Elvis is no big deal. Right, but what I feel is in the last 10 to 15 years, and I've had this discussion with many people, and you may agree,
it's gone overboard.
What has happened in the last 10 years, I don't feel was a natural progression. Something has happened. Maybe it's been the internet or what, but just the brutality and the vulgarity of the direction which this country's going to, I don't feel like this was natural this last 15 years. There's definitely been an increase or an acceleration in a lack of morals and just understanding and compassion for each other, or even animals, like you mentioned. There's something different I feel is happening. A lot of people, to me, have theorized. They think it's the internet, and I think that's a pretty good theory.
I bet you and I would both agree that it's been a systematic psyop that's been doled out for generations, that when we watch television programming, we are in fact programming our generations, new and
Absolutely.
old, and that basically we've been, it's kind of like how you said Elvis wasn't that big of a deal, or it was a huge deal, but
now it's not that big of a deal. Back then it was. You get what I'm saying?
Right, and like Friday the 13th, the first one might have been shocking at the time, but then the ones that came after, they kept having to outdo. And you might have this generational thing too, simply where, look, the music that sells is the music that angers your parents, that they find. Right. And so in this endeavor, how do you anger your parents when they're former, like, metalhead, pothead, you know? Great. How do you break new ground, right? Be good? Dress like a preppy? I don't know.
Right. I mean, there was a comedian, I forget who it was, years ago, and it was a famous clip. I've seen it replayed a bunch of times where the guy says, what happens when you're in your 90s, your 80s, and you're telling your grandchildren, yeah, when we met, we were dancing to a Two Live Crew song, you know, and it's like there will come a time when elderly people were people that, you know, they met out on the floor bumping and grinding, and it gets a little bizarre. And another thing I want to say too, Michael, while you're on it, I mean, you mentioned music. Whether it's music or TV shows or pop culture, you know, I get this all the time. Like, you know, if I say something about, you know, Kesha, for example, and, you know, her videos are just promoting the most disgusting, vulgar behavior, telling little girls, you know, it's okay if you wake up and you're drunk, you don't know what planet you're on, what guy you were hanging out with. And, you know, people give me this all the time, like, you know what, Dan, Kesha and Katy Perry and Nicki Minaj and all these people, they're not the parent. It's up to the parents. And I said, yeah, you're right. But it gets to a point where you put on, like, Nickelodeon, and Kesha is it's a commercial for her record, and she's going to be on the Teen Choice Awards. Then you go to the grocery store, and Maxim magazine is 2 feet off the ground, and it's like 50 sex positions to try with your partner, and it's right there, and little kids are learning how to read, and then the little kid goes to school, the little third grader, and they're hearing about this stuff at school. It's like, at what point, I mean, does the parent, I mean, the parents their backs are against the wall. You can shelter the kid, and they're still going to hear about it somewhere. And I'm a true believer that it takes a village to raise a child. I really believe that. And Katy Perry and all these people, Nicki Minaj, you know, I've had so many little inner city girls in my audience, and a lot of them are misguided, and they're looking for somebody to look up to or whatever. Their father's not around. I'm not trying to stereotype or put all inner city kids in that category, but it does exist, and they hang on every word that Nicki Minaj says. So when she's talking about killing Mariah Carey and this and that on the television show, the American Idol, there's a lot of little girls that look up to that and they copy her, and artists have to start realizing that.
You know what, Dan? Let's talk about that and much more when we come back.
All right,
We're
great.
going to take a short commercial break. Thank you, Dan Lozzi, on the line, everyone. We'll be right back. You're listening to RiverwestRadio.com. The kitchen is the heart of the home. But at Monsanto, we're a megalithic agricultural group attempting to destroy farmers all across your country. We bring you horrible foods that attack your stomach lining, DNA, give you kidney and liver failure. Monsanto, bringing Franken foods to your family at home. Don't you just hate us? Say no to GMO.